Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and I'm very pleased and excited to bring to you a special 5-part podcast series based upon an interview with Dr. Kyle Welch from George Washington University on his recent paper, Evidence on the Use and Efficacy of Internal Whistleblowing Systems. First, a word from our sponsor, Navix Global. Navix Global offers a comprehensive suite of ethics and compliance software, content, and services that helps organizations protect their people, reputation, and bottom line. With more than 13,000 customers, including 85% of the Fortune 500, Navix Global Solutions support the largest ethics and compliance community in the world. Over this 5-part podcast series, I take a deep dive into Dr. Welch's paper and explore why it is so important and significant for the compliance practitioner. We look into the background of why he started to study, what some of the key information he read to prepare for his research, what he expected or what predictions he had from looking at the numbers. Then we consider what his research found, and finally we tie it all together with what it all means for the compliance practitioner. This is one of the most significant academic studies for FCPA and anti-bribery compliance practitioners, and indeed all compliance practitioners. I know you will find this podcast series useful and helpful, as well as the paper, which of course we will link to in the show notes. This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist. This special podcast series is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back again for another episode in my 5-part exploration with Dr. Kyle Welch of his recently released paper, Evidence on the Use and Efficacy of Internal Whistleblowing Systems. First of all, Dr. Welch, welcome back, and thank you again for taking the time to visit with me.
Happy to be here.
So today, in this episode, I wanted to focus on a little bit of the background that you detailed in your paper. So could we start with what are some of the key whistleblower laws that impacted you in your research?
Sure. This is the history of internal of reporting, humans reporting problems that they observe to authorities is an interesting history. In the United States, to my understanding, it started back during the Civil War is kind of the first laws that came out related to it. And these laws enabled individuals, if they noticed people defrauding the government during this time, were able to report on the misdeeds that were being done to the government, and they received a financial reward. And since then, there have been a number of similar type of things. One of the biggest ones that's out there is if you're a contractor for the government and you observe somebody working for the government doing something wrong, or if you are aware of some mishandling with one of these contractors for the government, you can actually report what's going wrong or the incident, and related to how much the government's being defrauded, you actually can get a financial reward. And so there's been a number of laws since the Civil War, and from a high level, the federal laws were the 1989 Whistleblower Protection Act. Industries have had their own laws related to it. In industries that have a lot of human capital, where problems, when humans make a mistake, it's a big deal. So, in healthcare, there was 1970s Occupational Safety and Healthcare Act, and then there's been a number of state laws. California had. In 1959, they had an act that was passed related to, Teamsters pushed it through to, false claims and fired employees that protecting them from coming forward with problems that they observed at firms. The two laws that come up the most currently in talking about this related to corporations is the 2002 Sarbanes-Oxley Act and the 2011 Dodd-Frank Act. And if you recall, Sarbanes-Oxley back in the day received initial interest because of what happened with Enron. Enron had done a number of things at the firm. Surprisingly, they had followed a lot of the accounting rules, but had broken fiduciary duty with their special purpose entities, and misrepresenting the true accounting of, the true accounting of what was going on. And internally in the organization, there was a whistleblower, and that person didn't go externally at first. They reported about it internally, and they had a number of negative consequences. And so the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, when they were debating it, our government was looking at it, debating on the law, put it on the shelf for a little while, and then WorldCom hit, which was the largest fraud, financial reporting fraud to date at that time. And that made it so that this thing went through, and it made a lot of stiff laws, and there was a lot of compliance that needed to be done related to it. One of the things that came out of it was Section 301 that required internal whistleblowing systems as a way for employees inside the organization to actually report on problems that they observe at the firm. That the requirement is that system needs to be basically managed by the audit subcommittee of the board of directors. So the audit subcommittee of the board of directors looks at these reports, looks at the level of the reports, and deals with the minutia associated with this. And firms like Navex Global provide the system, and the benefit that they provide to firms is they provide a way for these employees to know that they're calling somebody outside the firm, so it's not going to be somebody that recognizes their voice. And it's a firm that is dedicated to making sure that their data they collect from employees is sacred and can be trusted, and that the individuals that want to remain anonymous can remain anonymous in their system. And so Sarbanes-Oxley came forward requiring these systems, and managers were all of a sudden that didn't necessarily know about them had to deal with these reports, and audit committees that didn't know about or didn't have them before started having to deal with them at that time. And so these reports started being a mainstay of public companies. Every public company had to have one of these. And it's not just public companies that utilize these systems. A ton of private companies do too. And even company and non-companies, churches, even government entities use these systems as a way to find information. So Sarbanes-Oxley came about, and that was a requirement for public companies. And then the Dodd-Frank came out in 2011. And Dodd-Frank in 2011 had kind of the opposite effect as Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley provided an incentive, or basically lowered the cost of providing information to management by requiring these systems. No longer did you have to leave a note, written with your left hand under the management's door without signing your name to talk about a problem. You had this external resource to use. Dodd-Frank noticed the problem that Lehman Brothers had and other firms had. And the problem Lehman Brothers had was they had a whistleblower that basically used the internal system. And from that internal system, it went to the audit committee, and there was a failure to identify the problem that was noted by the whistleblower and to respond to it appropriately. And so it was related to an accounting manipulation using Repo 105, which was a gross manipulation, and from that, Dodd-Frank was passed. And a key stipulation in Dodd-Frank is that you can go to they created the Office of the Whistleblower at the SEC. And if you take whistleblowing financial reporting events to the SEC, individuals that come forward with this information can get financial compensation from the government for identifying fraudulently reported financial accounting information by public companies. And that's basically, the law essentially is an incentive to go external with problems that you observe at a firm so that you can get a financial reward. And so the two laws are both in play currently, and employees that are observing problems are protected. There's protections for employees under each law in different situations, and for different types of reporting.
Was there any other academic research that you were able to, if not draw upon, use as background in your research?
Yeah, there was. So there's most of this stuff, most of the things related to internal. So there's a key difference of internal reporting and external reporting. And so internal reporting, what I mean by that is, employees using systems, whistleblowing systems like Navex to go in and say what they observe, and that report goes directly to management at the firm, people that can deal directly with the problem at the firm. Then there's external reporting, and that means going to a reporter or going to a government official to report of the problem. And so in looking at the background and research on this, there has been research on it, but it's pretty much all been external reporting from academia. External whistleblowing reports were found in a number of papers. Essentially there's 3 or 4 papers that look at these external reports. And they find that they're more common in large growing firms with weak governance. Usually firms that have poor stock and earnings performance, and that they, once they have these reports, there's subsequent increase in litigation associated with these external reports, or people going to regulators or having a lawsuit with the firm. And then these external reports, as they come out, are associated with more severe penalties from the SEC. In the Department of Justice regulation. There's been some research that shows that firms have responded to the regulation without, not even looking at research. Just as a result of the regulation, managers seem to be a little bit more aware of the problem that it poses to them, that somebody has a financial incentive, and so to report these to regulators. And so earnings management has been shown to be a little bit lower. But that's all dealing with external reporting. And the key thing about our research is that we have this access to this data that is all on internal systems and internal reporting to managers of problems. And you could imagine that could be similar or it could be different. The other research that's been done looking at this type of thing is mostly done by surveys and talking to people that have uncovered problems at firms. And so if you look at the research on fraud detection, by a large margin, if you look at the surveys that are taken by, you have your internal auditors, and then you have, regulators externally. By a huge margin, most people familiar with problems at firms and how they're discovered say that human capital is the way you discover them, that employees reporting on them is the way to discover problems internally at the firm. And we know from the SEC, from the reports they've had, that this is, for them, even externally, humans are the biggest way that they discover problems also, even before these incentives were there. And so the existing research lets us know a couple things. One, when there's external reporting that happens, there's more bad things that follow. The first report that comes out externally via news, via regulator, there's usually more that comes after that. And then second, there's more problems that come after that. And the second is what we know from the existing research is that it seems that humans are a key factor in solving this problem and identifying it. Unfortunately, we haven't created an AI or a computer that can just read things and point us at the problem. Humans are a huge part of this and identifying it. And so, as great as big data is, this is a story where humans are needed to be able to uncover and find problems.
So, Dr. Welch, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode, but I've been visiting with Dr. Kyle Welch on his recently released paper, Evidence on the Use and Efficacy of Internal Whistleblowing Systems. Today, we've talked a little bit about the background, and I hope you'll join us for our next episode, where we look at, in more detail, an issue we teased in the first episode, which is what predictions and what did he expect to find. So, Dr. Welch, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you enjoyed this episode of my 5-part exploration with Dr. Kyle Welch on his recently released paper, Evidence on the Use and Efficacy of Internal Whistleblowing Systems. I hope you will find this podcast series as powerful a tool for you as a chief compliance officer or a compliance practitioner that you can have. I hope you will join us again for our next episode. This